Why does the team with nothing left to win sometimes become the hardest team to play against? It sounds backwards. The worst team should be the easiest night on the schedule. That is what the standings tell you. That is what the fans expect. That is what a contender wants to believe when the season is getting tight, the legs are heavy, and every point feels like oxygen. But hockey does not care what the standings are supposed to mean. The team at the bottom can walk into the rink with a strange kind of freedom. No one expects them to control the game. No one expects them to save the season. No one expects them to look dangerous. And that is exactly where the trap begins. Because the favorite is not just playing an opponent, it is playing pressure. It is playing the fear of wasting an easy game. It is playing the noise that starts the second the first period does not go according to plan. The bad team hears none of that in the same way. Its season may already be broken, but the people inside that room are not finished. A young player is fighting to prove he belongs. A backup goalie is trying to steal a job. A veteran knows another contract may depend on how he looks when the games get ugly. A coach is trying to keep a room from slipping into silence. So the paradox is not that bad teams are secretly great. The paradox is that a bad team can become dangerous for reasons that have almost nothing to do with the standings. They can play loose while the favorite plays tight. They can take risks while the contender protects itself. They can turn a meaningless game for the franchise into the most important game of someone's career. And once that happens, the safe game is not safe anymore. Because in the NHL, the worst opponent is not always the one with the most talent. Sometimes it is the one with nothing left to lose. To understand why this happens, you have to understand what the NHL actually is. It is not a league where the stronger team can simply show up, press a button, and collect the win. Hockey is too unstable for that. The rink is too small. The puck is too fast. The boards create chaos. A clean breakout can die on one bad bounce. A perfect defensive shift can be ruined by a stick blade in the wrong place. A team can control the game for long stretches, then lose the scoreboard in a few seconds. That is what makes the bottom of the standings deceptive. Over a full season, the table usually tells the truth. Bad teams have holes. Maybe they cannot defend the rush. Maybe their depth falls apart after the top line. Maybe their penalty kill is bleeding chances. Maybe their goaltending cannot survive the pressure. There is usually a reason they are down there. But one game is not a full season. One game is a smaller, stranger world. A tired favorite can run into a desperate forecheck. A sloppy contender can feed the underdog transition chances. A backup goalie can find rhythm early and start playing like the puck is magnetic. Suddenly, the team that looked harmless on paper is forcing hurried passes, blocked lanes, nervous decisions, and long shifts that were never supposed to happen. The salary cap adds another layer. The NHL is designed to keep the gap from getting too comfortable. Great teams are still better, but they are not invincible. Weak teams are still flawed, but they are not empty. Even a club buried near the bottom usually has real NHL players, real speed, real shooters, real pride, and at least a few pieces that can hurt you if you give them space. That is why the word worst can be misleading. Worst over months does not mean helpless tonight. And once you understand that difference, the paradox starts to look less like an accident and more like a warning. The first turn is psychological. By the time a team sinks to the bottom, the outside world usually stops talking about winning. Fans start looking at prospects. Reporters start asking about the deadline. Front offices start thinking about contracts, draft odds, cap space, and who still fits the future. The season begins to split in two. There is the team as an organization, and then there are the players on the ice. Those are not always the same thing. A front office can afford to think long-term. A general manager can look at a losing streak and see a better draft position. A fan can watch a late-season loss and convince himself it helps the rebuild. But the player taking a hit on the forecheck is not thinking like that. The defenseman blocking a shot is not trying to improve lottery odds. The winger called up from the minors is not skating through pain so the franchise can move one spot higher in June. He is trying to stay in the league. That changes everything. A bad team near the end of a lost season can become a room full of individual battles. One player is auditioning for next year. Another is trying to avoid being traded. Another is trying to prove the injury did not take his speed. Another knows that if he disappears now, the league may remember. So the standings say the game means nothing. But inside the room, it can mean everything. That is why these teams can be so uncomfortable to play. They may not have a clean system. They may not have enough depth. They may not be built to win over 82 games, but they can still bring short bursts of desperation that do not show up in the standings. A contender expects structure. Instead, it gets chaos with a pulse. It gets players jumping on loose pucks like their careers depend on it, because sometimes, in a very real way, they do. And that is when the favorite starts to realize something strange. The team with nothing left to win still has people with everything left to prove. Now the pressure flips. Before the puck drops, the favorite is supposed to own the night. The standings say it, the broadcast says it, the schedule says it. The fans are already counting the points before the first shift even happens. That is a dangerous place to be. Because when a contender plays another contender, the danger feels obvious. Everyone is awake. Every detail matters. Every player understands that one soft shift can turn the game. But when the opponent is buried at the bottom, the brain starts making quiet bargains. Maybe we do not need our best game. Maybe we can ease into it. Maybe talent will solve this later. That is where the trap opens. The first few minutes do not feel alarming. A missed pass here, a failed clear there, a power play that looks a little too casual. Then the underdog scores first, and suddenly the entire emotional weight of the game changes. The bad team gets energy, the building gets nervous, the favorite stops playing the game it planned and starts playing the score it hates. Now every simple play feels heavier. A defenseman who usually makes the calm pass starts forcing the stretch play. A forward cheats for offense because tying the game feels urgent. The goalie knows one more mistake turns an embarrassing night into a real problem. The bench gets quieter. The coach starts shortening shifts. The crowd starts reacting to every dump in like something is wrong. And the worst team in the league can feel it. That is the cruel part. A weak team may not be built to dominate, but it can smell panic. It can protect the middle, chip pucks out, turn the game ugly, and make the favorite drag its own frustration around the ice. The longer it stays close, the more the favorite has to lose. The underdog does not need to prove it is better. It only needs to make the favorite prove it is not afraid. The deeper reason is that the NHL does not reward or punish teams in a simple, clean way. A bad season is not just a bad season, it becomes a machine. Every loss changes the conversation around the roster. Every injury changes who gets called up. Every trade rumor changes the room. Every young player suddenly becomes part of a future that has not arrived yet. And every veteran starts to wonder whether he is still part of the plan. From the outside, people want to make it simple. Win now or rebuild, contend or tank, buy or sell. But inside the NHL, those lines blur fast. A team can sell at the deadline and still become harder to play against. That sounds impossible until you think about what selling actually does. It removes familiar players, it opens minutes, it changes roles, it forces younger players into situations they were not supposed to handle yet. Some of them sink. Some of them suddenly skate like the door of their career just opened, and the opponent does not always know what version is coming. That is the danger of a team in transition. There is less old rhythm to scout, less predictable chemistry, less fear of breaking the plan because the plan is already broken. A coach might try combinations he would never use in a normal playoff race. A rookie might play with reckless speed because nobody has taught him to hesitate yet. A goaltender might face too many shots, but if he sees the puck early, the whole game can bend around him. Then there is the draft. The organization may be staring at the future. Fans may be tracking lottery odds, but the players still have to live in the present. The lottery itself also makes losing less clean than people imagine. Finishing low can help a team's chances, but it does not turn defeat into a guaranteed prize. There is uncertainty built into the system. So, the worst team sits in a strange place. The franchise may benefit from tomorrow, but the players are fighting for tonight. That split is where the paradox gets teeth. The human part is what makes this feel so different from the standings. Because when people say a team has nothing left to play for, they usually mean the franchise. They mean the playoffs are gone, they mean the standings are hopeless, they mean the season has stopped being about a banner, a run, or a trophy, but no player experiences a lost season that cleanly. For a young forward, those final games might be the difference between becoming part of the next core and becoming just another name in the system. Every shift is an argument. Every puck battle says something. Every mistake can feel louder because there is no winning season to hide inside. For a defenseman trying to survive in the league, a bad team can be the only place where he gets real minutes. The kind of minutes that expose him, but also give him proof. He is not playing for a parade. He is playing for another sweater, another contract, another chance to show that he can handle NHL speed when everything around him is messy. For a goalie, it can be even stranger. A bottom team can hang him out to dry for weeks. Too many rush chances, too many screens, too many defensive breakdowns that make every save look harder than it should be. But that also creates the perfect stage for one dangerous night. If he gets hot early, he is not just stopping pucks. He is changing the emotional temperature of the game. The favorite starts pressing, the underdog starts believing, and the goalie becomes the bridge between a lost season and a stolen night. Even the coach is trapped inside this paradox. He may know the roster is flawed. He may know the front office is already thinking ahead, but he still has to stand behind the bench and ask grown men to compete with pride when the league has almost stopped watching. That is not nothing. That is pressure in a different disguise. And when a team full of players under that kind of pressure runs into a favorite expecting an easy win, the game can become personal very quickly. Here's the contradiction most fans feel but rarely separate. The organization can want one thing. The players can want the opposite. A front office might look at the bottom of the standings and understand the value of a better draft position. It might trade away veterans, it might protect cap space, it might stop chasing short-term fixes because the season is already gone. From the outside, that can look like surrender. But surrender is not how NHL players are wired to survive. Nobody reaches that level by being comfortable with losing on purpose. Nobody stays in that league by treating real games like paperwork. Even on a bad team, the ice is full of players being judged by coaches, scouts, teammates, agents, future employers, and sometimes their own doubt. That is why the word tanking can be misleading. A franchise can rebuild. A front office can sell. A fan base can accept losses because it sees a possible reward later. But the player taking a face-off in his own zone with a one-goal lead is not trying to lose for a lottery ball. He is trying to win that draw. The winger racing for an empty net is not thinking about a prospect ranking. He is thinking about burying the game before the other bench wakes up. That gap creates one of the strangest emotional splits in hockey. The fans might cheer a loss in April because they believe it helps the future. The players might hate the same loss because it stains the present. And both sides can be rational. That is what makes the worst team so difficult to read. Are they broken? Are they rebuilding? Are they evaluating? Are they dangerous? The answer can change from period to period. A team can look lifeless on one night, then play like every loose puck is a personal insult on the next. For the favorite, that uncertainty is poison. Because the moment you assume the opponent has accepted losing, you give them the one thing every desperate team wants: a reason to prove you wrong. The peak of this paradox usually arrives when the calendar starts to feel cruel. Late in the season, the games stop being equal. On paper, every win is still worth the same, but emotionally, they are not the same at all. A win in November can disappear into the long schedule. A loss in March can follow a team like a shadow. By April, one bad night can change a playoff race, a matchup, a home ice chase, or the entire mood around a contender. That is exactly when the worst team becomes most dangerous. Not because it suddenly has better players. Because the pressure around the game becomes completely uneven. The contender walks in, carrying months of work, it has a playoff spot to protect, a division race to chase, a fan base expecting urgency, and a room that knows every mistake will be measured against the bigger picture. The bottom team walks in with a different kind of energy. It has no standings pressure left. It can be loose, it can be annoying, it can turn the game into mud and dare the favorite to stay patient. Then, the first strange bounce happens. A harmless shot hits a skate. A clearing attempt lands on the wrong stick. A fourth line shift pins the favorite in its own zone. A goalie makes the first save, then the second, then the third, and suddenly the game no longer feels like a mismatch. It feels like a trap with a scoreboard. That is when the favorite starts negotiating with panic. Do we push harder or stay disciplined? Do we open the game or protect against the counterattack? Do we trust the system or force the heroic play? The underdog loves those questions. It lives inside them. Every rushed pass feeds it. Every frustrated hit energizes it. Every missed net makes the favorite feel the clock a little more. And the worst part is that the bottom team does not have to play perfect hockey forever. It only has to make the contender uncomfortable long enough for one mistake to become the whole story. The real answer is not that the worst team is secretly better than everyone thinks. That would be too easy. The real answer is asymmetry. A contender and a bottom team can stand on the same ice, play under the same rules, chase the same puck, and still experience the game in completely different ways. One side is protecting something. The other side is searching for something. One side is judged by the standard of what it is supposed to become in the playoffs. The other side is judged by flashes, effort, development, pride, and whether anyone inside the room still looks alive. That changes the weight of every mistake. When a contender gives up the first goal, it feels like a warning sign. When the worst team gives up the first goal, it can feel like the script everyone expected. The favorite has to fix the story. The underdog only has to disturb it. That is why these games can get so strange. The favorite may have more talent, more structure, more experience, and a much better record. But the bottom team may have more freedom inside that one night. It can attack without the same fear of embarrassment. It can simplify without looking small. It can celebrate an ugly win like a statement, while the favorite treats an ugly win like a narrow escape. And if the game reaches the third period still close, the emotional gap gets even sharper. The favorite starts to see the consequences. Lost points, bad headlines, a missed chance to climb, a nervous room, a coach answering the same uncomfortable question in different words. The underdog sees something else, a chance to ruin the script. That is the insight at the center of the paradox. The NHL standings measure what a team has been across a long, brutal schedule. But they cannot fully measure urgency, looseness, pride, opportunity, or the strange power of being dismissed. The worst team is not always dangerous because it is strong. Sometimes it is dangerous because the other team needs the game to make sense, and hockey rarely promises that. So the next time a team at the bottom of the standings ruins a contender's night, it should not feel like some random glitch in the hockey universe. It is the sport showing you one of its oldest truths. The standings can tell you who has survived the season better. They can show who has more depth, more consistency, more answers, more nights where the system held together. Over time, that matters. Over time, the best teams usually separate. Over time, weakness gets exposed. But a single NHL game is not played over time. It is played in moments. One blocked shot, one nervous breakout, one goalie who refuses to break, one young player who skates like the league is about to decide his future. One contender that starts the night expecting control and ends it chasing a game it never respected enough. That is where the worst team becomes dangerous. Not because losing made it powerful, because losing stripped away the illusion. The season is already damaged. The expectations are gone. The shame has already arrived. And once a team has already been counted out, it can sometimes play with a kind of reckless honesty that contenders spend all year trying to manage. The favorite wants order. The underdog brings disorder. The favorite wants the standings to explain the night. The underdog turns the night into something the standings cannot explain. And that is why this paradox keeps coming back. In a league built on speed, pressure, pride, and tiny margins, the team with nothing left to win can still have everything left to disturb. It can steal points. It can bend a playoff race. It can make a strong team look suddenly fragile. It can remind everyone that being better on paper is not the same as being safe on the ice. Because hockey does not always punish the weaker team first. Sometimes it punishes the team that thinks the answer is already obvious.